Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here, and welcome back to the National Telegraph YouTube channel. This feels like the most formulaic story in Canadian politics right now. We've been discussing the possibility of a snap election for several months now, and that's not just because of fake hype. There genuinely is a good chance of having a snap election in the year 2026. But the other part of the story that we're going to talk about that is going to shock absolutely nobody is Ontario Premier Doug Ford betraying conservatives. Yes, he is supposedly a conservative politician himself. He leads a progressive conservative government in Ontario, but let's be clear, he is not a conservative in any way. If you live in the province of Ontario, I urge you to go and support the new Blue Party of Ontario. Honestly, it doesn't even matter if they can win a seat or not. There's just no point in voting for the PCs. Voting for the PC party is just as bad as voting for the Liberals. And here is where I completely disagree with the pleb reporter because he said, well, Doug Ford sucks so much, I'm going to go and encourage people to vote for the Liberals. No, I still don't think you vote for a party that you hate. I think you should at least vote for a party that actually stands for things you like. But I can, in no good conscience, tell people to vote for the Progressive Conservative Party. Maybe if your MPP is like really, really good and it's a complete outlier from the normal PC party politicians like Sam Oosterhoff, maybe Bobby Ann Brady's a great independent if you're in Halderman, Norfolk. But elsewhere, I'd basically say pretty much New Blue Party is your main option. But in just a second here, I want to go through the Globe and Mail story about the snap election potentially getting called because we had Mark Carney discussing the possibility with Doug Ford, who looks like he is absolutely scheming with the federal Liberals to try and help get them a majority Liberal government. But before I get into it, guys, I just want to remind you if you like the show, make sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are not yet a subscriber, leave a comment about what you think about all this stuff. And of course, if you want to help sustain the channel, you can always make a monthly contribution by hitting the join button and joining the membership program. It helps make the channel more sustainable for me, as well as it allows me to be less reliant on the YouTube algorithm and cover more niche topics that usually would not do well on this platform, like provincial politics in a place like New Brunswick or covering a Toronto or Vancouver mayor's race. Anyways, let's get right into it. I'll bring up the Globe and Mail story and we'll go through some of the details. A little bit of it's kind of what you'd assume, so I'm not going to read you this full thing. But we have here in this story from, I'll just credit them, Laura Stone and Robert Fife from the Globe and Mail. It says, Prime Minister Mark Carney and Ontario Premier Doug Ford have discussed the possibility of an early federal election in casual conversation about the importance of a majority mandate to deal with uncertain economic times, according to three sources. The sources said that the progressive conservative premier, who has forged a close relationship with the liberal leader, offers his opinion that the country needs economic stability. One of the sources familiar with the discussion said Ford told Mr. Carney that an election is an opportunity to win a clear majority mandate, but the source stressed that Mr. Ford's comments should not be seen as an endorsement of the federal Liberals, who are currently 2 seats shy of majority. Mr. Carney previously said publicly that he is not considering a snap election, and his office repeated that assertion on Sunday. Quote, we are not going to the polls, as the Prime Minister has clearly said to the media availability, unquote. His spokesperson, Audrey Champeau, told the Globe and Mail, referring to January 26 comments from Mr. Carney, in which he said he was, quote, focused on the results for Canadians, unquote. Now, you have to remember, though, is that Carney's never going to say he wants an election until he calls one. The biggest tell so far about an election being called, other than this story where he was openly discussing the matter with Doug Ford, was when he was previously at a press conference announcing his grocery rebate. When someone asked him if he's considering a spring 2026 snap election, he basically dodged the question. If it was no, he would just say no, because by saying anything other than no at the time, he did raise anxieties. Now, maybe that was kind of deliberate. He was just going to give a non answer if anyone asked him about a snap election, see what the Canadian electorate thinks about that, and then just say no later on. Because, again, as the Prime Minister, you're never going to say yes until you're literally at a podium announcing the new snap election, because you don't want to give your opponents more of a heads up than they already get through their back channels. But Although they said that one of the sources said that Doug Ford is not endorsing the Liberals, he very clearly has been endorsing them. He's been palling around with them, normalizing voting Liberal for his PC party base, which has mostly overlap with federal conservatives, but significantly relies on around a quarter to a third of federal Liberals voting for him in order to get his majority governments. Doug Ford knows what he's doing. He wants to play this inside outside game where, oh no, 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 he still sometimes talks tough to the liberals, but don't worry. So don't worry, he's still a conservative. At the same time, he's bear hugging Carney and saying that, well, we need this because of Team Canada and the rest. Now, at the end of last month, it actually did look like there could be a conflict brewing between Doug Ford and Mark Carney. But what Mark Carney did after signing that new trade deal with China and opening up Canada's market to 49,000 Chinese made EVs every year, at least actually just starting at 49,000, it can expand from there. Doug Ford seems to have gotten Carney recently to come out with that new EV subsidy that is supposedly going to subsidize the purchase of Canadian made EVs. Although, when you actually look at what it's subsidizing, it's actually mostly foreign made cars. As long as a couple things are done with them in Canada, I guess it's Canadian owned. But that was to basically try and buoy the Canadian auto sector. Now, it's being done incompetently, but that was probably a handout directed at getting Doug Ford back on Mark Carney's side ahead of a new snap election. That's another big piece of evidence to say that we are probably going to go into a snap election. It's all of the futzing around by Mark Carney, passing stuff like his GST rebate, although I think he still has to technically pass certain elements of that. But he has the GST rebate, he has the EV subsidy, he's putting out a bunch of other subsidies to affected industries by tariffs, but he won't actually get a trade deal signed with the US because the liberal base is so hyper anti-American. Mark Carney has sized it up as better for him to fail at his only campaign promise last election rather than fulfill it. Because if he fulfills it, maybe someone like Laura Babcock will be really upset and then they will go vote NDP because it's not elbows up to actually sign anything. Even though we voted for him, not like we as in you and I watching on this channel, but like we as Canadians allowed him to be prime minister for another term because he said he was going to get a trade deal done. That doesn't matter because right now we are supposed to be mad at Trump and the Americans for everything that's mainly a problem of our own bad domestic policies. But I want to read a little bit more of this article. Then I want to jump over to just some more stuff regarding Doug Ford. So it says here, Mr. Ford's office declined to comment. Oh, big shock there. The conversations between the Prime Minister and Mr. Ford underscore how close the two leaders have become, despite their different party affiliations, as Mr. Ford pushes for federal policies to help his province weather the trade war with the U.S., and as Mr. Carney casts himself as a unifier in the face of American aggression. The relationship could be especially important for Mr. Carney, whose party fell short of a majority last year in large part because it failed to make significant gains in populous suburban ridings in the Greater Toronto Area and surrounding regions in southern Ontario. The conversations happened on several occasions, both in person and over the phone, including at the First Minister's meeting in Ottawa on January 29th, the source says. Another of these sources said the Premier recounted to them that Mr. Ford had advised Mr. Carney to trigger an election. Mr. Ford won a third majority government after he called an early election last year, saying he needed a mandate to take on U.S. President Donald Trump. The first source said the two leaders have also discussed their respective poll numbers, including those that show Mr. Carney is much farther ahead in personal popularity than Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre. Now, I feel like this is all pointing to the idea that Doug Ford really wants to try and replace Pierre Poilievre as the federal Conservative leader. And despite at the recent PC AGM him saying, oh no, I want a fourth term, I want a full 15 years as premier, I think that's true until it's not true. I think Doug Ford really just is saying that because he doesn't want anyone to think he's scheming, even though in this story, he has just been caught scheming, telling Carney that it would be a great idea for him to go to a snap election while he is at the height of his popularity. Now, I'm just going to quickly pull some polls up on screen. This isn't going to be a polling video on the whiteboard. I just want to give you some context of the sort of polls that Mr. Carney is currently reacting to and why he might call an election. Now, we're going to start off with one from Research Co. that is helping drive the narrative that if Carney calls an election, he's easily going to win a majority government. This poll is from Research Co., conducted between February 4th and the 6th, with 1,001 people answering the poll. And it has the Liberals at 45%, the Conservatives at 32%, that being a 13% lead for the Liberals, NDP's at 10, Bloc Québécois at 7, obviously that's all in Quebec, Green Party's at 3, and PPC is at 2. Now, I don't actually think this poll is accurate, and I'll even scroll up just to show you what I think is more realistic. Now, I think right now, and I know people are like, no, any poll that shows the Liberals leading is bad. And now that's not a lot of people, but I could see the Liberals being ahead by 4% by right now. Nanos even gives themselves a fairly, pessimistic type margin of error. They give themselves a 3.1% margin of error, so their numbers could be within 3%. Now, it's a little bit different when you have a lot of parties, but the Liberals could be up by another 1.5 points. Conservatives could be up by another 1.5 points. Liberals could be down. I don't think the Conservatives are actually below 35% at all. NDP is probably maybe a little overpolled here. Maybe the Bloc is too. But I think this is more realistic. But Carney may accidentally screw himself over by triggering an election because of all these frankly ridiculous polls showing he's at 50% and Poilievre's at 30. It's like, do you really think that that's true? Poilievre just got an 87% approval vote in his leadership review at the Federal Conservative Convention. And now I'm going to qualify that by saying, obviously, those people are predisposed to liking him. They are Conservative Party members at the convention. But my point is that if anyone on the ground seriously was feeling that nobody likes Poilievre, we can't win with him, there would have been a lot of anxiety and there would have been a lot of people, even maybe consciously, maybe unconsciously, voting saying we got to get rid of him because we need to bring in someone more unifying. Now, I don't actually think there is anyone more unifying than Poilievre. I'm not saying he's the height of unity. I'm not saying that everyone else sucks but him or something like that. My point is that it's kind of a media trick acting like whoever the Conservative Party leaders, people just don't like him. Maybe if they put in someone like Aaron O'Toole, Canadians would vote for this party, even though the Conservatives lost with Aaron O'Toole. And at the time, the media was like, oh my goodness, if only they had someone like Andrew Scheer. And when the Conservatives had someone like Andrew Scheer, the media was like, oh my goodness, if only they had someone like Stephen Harper. And when Stephen Harper was around before he won his majority, they were like, well, maybe people would like him more if he was more like Brian Mulroney or more like Kim Campbell or Stockwell Day. Stockwell Day is amazing, by the way. I'm not trying to slag anyone here. But you always get this stuff. JJ McCullough just made a great video, and congratulations to him on making his 600th video. I know I've made over like 1,200 videos, but heck, I'm making like 1 or 2 videos a day. That guy puts in like real effort into all of his content and like draws his own cartoons to put in the video. It's great. But he noted that all of the polling asking people what Poilievre could be doing better to make him more likable ends up contradicting things. Like Poilievre constantly talks about kitchen table issues. But one of the things, the main criticisms of people who supposedly don't like Poilievre was that he doesn't talk enough about kitchen table issues. That just seems like a backhanded attack on Poilievre from people who probably are just predisposed not to like him and pretending that he doesn't talk about the issues I care about. He does. You just don't like him because either you're a hardcore liberal or because you just follow whatever the TV box, the CBC box tells you about him. Oh, he's mean. He's Trump-like, so I can't like him. I think Poilievre is the type of guy who actually gets more vote than his popularity would ascribe to him, kind of like Donald Trump, which is a strange comparison. If you treat him like any politician like crap and demonize them, naturally, I think there are people who are going to say they don't like them, but they'll vote for them anyways because they secretly do like them. Same thing with Mark Carney, but in reverse. He's so boring that you kind of don't hate him, but it doesn't mean you're actually going to vote for his party if you say that you approve of him. This is all a very long and winding way of coming back and saying that Poilievre at the moment, really his approval numbers inside the party and elsewhere, other indicators don't really show that he's a man who is going to have a hard time running in another election. Doesn't mean he's going to lose, but he's not as unpopular as the polls would suggest. And I don't think that the Conservative Party federally wants a Doug Ford. I want to bring this other thing up on screen right now, and I want to highlight something from the New Blue Party. Honestly, they always have really good-looking communications. I know I'm rambling a little bit in this video. First, I do want to highlight the fact that Jamil Jivani absolutely was right back on April 30th, a little bit after the election when he helped the Liberals win, that the Ontario PC Party is effectively a federal Liberal front group. He posted this fantastic meme. We also have this from the New Blue Party in Ontario, and it says, Doug Ford doesn't oppose the federal Liberals. He's piggybacking off of them and pretends he's conservative. And then you can see the graphic right here. This is the New Blue Party kind of leadership team. It's the husband and wife, Jim and Belinda Carahalios. Belinda being a former MPP, and Jim was the guy who started actually the Axe the Carbon Tax movement back in 2018. People always forget about that. But I think at this point, the Conservatives honestly do just need to kick Doug Ford to the curb, at least in a subtle way. The federal Conservatives should never pretend the PCs are a partner of them. They are. Doug Ford is Lucy in this football. Every single time Conservatives try and partner with him, and maybe we can partner on some conservative initiatives, he just doesn't follow through because he's not conservative. And at the end of the day, he loves the subsidy economics of the federal Liberals. He doesn't want Poilievre winning and cutting off all the subsidies the federal government gives to industries in Ontario. He doesn't want to build a real economy by lowering tax and regulations. He just wants the federal government to keep pumping money into Ontario from the taxpayers rather than actually just, doing it the hard way and just cutting off the gravy train. And so I think that the federal Conservatives don't need to partner with like a New Blue Party, but just withhold your vote from the PCs. Don't help them if Doug Ford's going to keep doing this stuff. Just leave them, just kick them to the curb. This is all just useless. But maybe I'll do this. I think I can find it before I end this video here. I remember seeing a Great Canadian Bagel, I believe, or somebody else did a critique on the new Research Co poll. It's pretty bad, the Research Co poll, in terms of the actual results. I'm going to quickly find this. I actually might pause because I didn't bring this up on screen yet, but I'm going to bring it to you guys just so you understand why when I look at a poll result that puts the Liberals above the Conservatives by 13 points, I'm not just being like, well, I want the Conservatives to be doing better. I can show you why the poll should not be trusted. Okay, I found it. Now we can bring it up on screen and talk about it. So here is on the website 338.com. This is all of the Research Co polls conducted since the last election. And the first thing you should notice is that they basically don't do much federal polling at all. And back here, this is the federal elections. They haven't even done 4 polls. They've done 3. They did 1 in July. They did 1 in October, or actually September. And they've done 1 just now, with a big departure since their last poll. They always showed the Liberals in the lead, but this is a pretty massive expansion in their lead from simply, 5 points back in September, and now it's 13 points as of February 5th or so. But look at the regionals here. The regionals, honestly, they're not that bad for the Conservatives in a place like Atlantic Canada. The Conservatives would honestly take something with like 34 to 37. That's not that bad for the Conservatives. But you go to like Quebec, and the Conservatives are only at like 17 points, which is horrific for them. They're at, what do we have here? In Alberta, they're like barely leading 44 to 34. And in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, the Liberals are in fact leading, when obviously that's a place the Conservatives do really, really well in, simply because, well, Saskatchewan is the most conservative province. And even if Manitoba isn't, you expect a massive Conservative lead because Conservatives do well in rural Manitoba. They win a couple suburban ridings, but then they mop up when it comes to Saskatchewan. So even if the Liberals are doing well in Winnipeg, even if they grab up 1 rural Saskatchewan riding, a good Liberal performance in Saskatchewan is like 35, 32%, and then the Conservatives should be at like 50. It's just how politics works in Manitoba. 15 is maybe even an overpoll for the NDP there. Alberta, 18% feels like an overpoll. British Columbia, and this demonstrates how much of an overpoll it is for 18% in Alberta for the NDP. The NDP is only at 15 in British Columbia, when that's kind of like one of their bread and butter provinces. Not as much like Alberta, where the only positive city is Edmonton, where they get like 1 or 2 seats. I think they only have 1, and that is Heather McPherson running for the leadership right now of the federal NDP. So yeah, I'm not being like, oh, well, this poll doesn't have the Conservatives leading, ergo I don't believe them. Also, here's another telltale sign a poll is bad. Female and male voters vote very differently in this country. Not like extremely wide, but it's significant. This is a very, very unified voter base. Other than female voters voting significantly more NDP than Bloc Québécois, the Liberal and Conservative numbers are like basically no different. 31% female voters for the Conservatives, 34% male voters for the Conservatives. It really should be like in a more reasonable poll that the female voters should actually be voting Conservative significantly less and males should be voting for it significantly more. There's not that much variation, which probably just says that research polled a lot of downtown Toronto liberal boomers. That's kind of it. Anyways, but with all that being said, thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. Consider joining the channel and contributing monthly to what I do. I try and make sure to provide enough content where I feel, comfortable actually even asking anyone to join it. But I always do clarify, especially if you're a senior living on a fixed income, I assure you, I do not want you to join the program. Do not contribute money to me if you are having trouble making ends meet. You already do enough by liking and subscribing and leaving comments and all that. The membership can basically be sustained by maybe several hundred people to make the channel really go. It doesn't need every single person to join. And I am never going to lock off content where some of it's only for members and some of it's open to the public. I want everything to remain open for the public because some of the purpose of this channel, although it's commentary and not actual pure news, I think it's actually has some value in learning about politics and figuring out who you want to vote for, figuring out the dynamics in the polling. I don't think it's useful for me to start basically saying, oh, you can watch this video, but not this one. Either it's important to say to everybody or it's just not worth covering at all. Anyways, with that all being said, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.